Today, we are very honored to be with Rony Camille, very dedicated clinical journalist and second speaker. His career began 25 years ago as a high school coachman. Rony had goal to establish himself in the world of journalism. He was not afraid to raise issues of concern in the community, was well-researched and respectful to everyone's views. It is my honor to present to you Rony Camille.
I don't need it, thank you so much. I have my remarks here. Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. You guys are educators, and this is all I get? This is the best thing I get? I hear you educators are the party people. Good morning. Good morning. All right. You guys are not in a classroom. You guys are not, dealing with some students. Those students are great, right? You guys are here to learn and stuff. So I want to start off with gratitude. Gratitude for being here at MCC and your 102nd annual gathering. That's a huge milestone. Gratitude for each of you and all the work that you do as educators. And of course, Dorothy O'Gara. It's very special to me and my family. 25 years ago this month, I sat in her business management class at Nashua High School, senior high school. This is before the split. And I sat in her business management class not knowing how much that moment would shape the rest of my life. So, Dottie, thank you so much for inviting me here in such a meaningful way. I can still remember being in that classroom in 2000 in the B wing at 16 years old, as Dottie said, full of energy and ideas, and I was assigned to write a business plan. My idea was to launch a radio station, and I had no idea at the time, sitting in that classroom, that plan would spark something much bigger. And for the first time, sitting there drafting that business plan out, building, creating something of my own. And here's the part that really amazed me while sitting in that business management course. I got college credit. Long before early college was even a phrase that people used in the industry. And that moment for me mattered because after all, I got college credit in high school. It was great. How about that? I'm an alumni of North Carolina Central University. And this week today is our Founders Day. And I remember walking on campus like, oh, well, I already got college credit. I'm already ahead. It's great. I said, maybe when I did that business plan, I said, maybe I'll do something like that. Maybe I will launch a radio station. And that class carried me through my entire career in journalism and in public service and everything that I've been able to do ever since. So today, when I think about your conference themes, insights to the future, I don't think about technology or economic trends or even spreadsheets. I think about that moment in high school, at Nashua High School, when I was challenged, believed in, and given the chance to see myself differently. It's because of those moments that define the future, as much as an invention or a policy. So after that business plan assignment, I didn't launch my radio station. Probably thought I could. But I did get confidence to do other things. And that confidence became the life force, the fuel that shaped the next 25. For the record, I think I got an A. And a few weeks after that, I launched a radio show on the local radio station in Nashua. I hosted the show, then I got hired, and so on and so forth. That momentum led into university at North Carolina Central University where I studied mass comm journalism. And back then, even so now, it was all about the news. And I remember one of my professors, good friend, one of my mentors, Brett Chambers, saying, Rony, you also have to learn the business side. You have to know where the revenue comes from. Otherwise, how you're getting paid. Otherwise, you won't get the full picture. And that struck with me. And I carried that into the real world, into newsrooms. So once I walked into the newsroom, I knew, okay, this is what we're doing, but all right, how is the big picture? How is it coming from? And so using that mindset, I use that in news, I use that in my government role, because that's where really the stakes are high and stories really matter there too. As you all know, I've had a very long career and it's been a winding path. Worked in the national press, been blessed and cursed to have worked at the national level at ABC News, the local level, down the street in Boston at 7 News and WBZ and WBUR. But I've brought my talents to local public service in a small town, helping to them navigate during COVID, bringing transparency to government and making sure that every resident has access to information that they need. And that all started 25 years ago. The common thread that I want to bring to the lesson is that it all started in that classroom. Thinking strategically, problem solving, communicating clearly, and most important, that ideas matter. The world has changed so much from that time, 25 years ago. It's crazy to think that the following year we had a major terrorist attack, which really shaped and has defined the way we are living right now. In addition to that, the tools that we use are different, the platforms are different, and the pace is even faster. But at the core skills are still there from that day, from Ms. O'Gara and all these other educators that I've had since then. And it's been those skills that I've put in my toolkit that has helped me propel forward. Being adaptable, being an effective communicator, and I have to credit the last one to my parents and my culture, being resilient. And those are the exact skills your students will need in the future. So when I look at business education now compared to what it was when I was seeing in that classroom, I see growth. And I bring it back to the early college credits that I earned. To me, back then, it was unusual, but I'm sure for those of you that have been in the industry, making sure that our students get those credits was very just advanced. Now, early college programs, dual enrollment, hands-on entrepreneurship, the CTA career pathway programs, those are giving students a head start. You know, I thought building a business plan in radio was cutting edge. Now your students are thinking about AI, using AI, learning it, coding it, and being sustainable, building a sustainable future. Here's the important part that you should all remember as business education educators. It's not about careers or balance sheets or learning the PLLs or how to balance or marketing. It's about making sure that you equip your students with the ability to think critically, solve real world problems, not just theory in a textbook, and act ethically in complex situations. That's the power you all do, every single one of you. You folks are shaping global citizens, not just worker bees, in a world that desperately need thoughtful, ethical, and empathetic leaders. That's no small thing. It's not a small thing to do. So I mentioned the three things earlier just now, but I wrote them down. The three insights that kind of have propelled me or carried me through over the last 25 years. One being adaptable. In the last 25 years, I've had to pivot a lot. As I mentioned, I went from being a general assignment reporter in Milford, New Hampshire, to going to 7 News on the web desk, and then in a short period of time being at the network. And then to local government, back to local news, back to local government. COVID, whatever's happening right now, I don't even know how to describe the modern era that we're in now. It's I don't know. But the world's moving fast. And your students, when you return to your classrooms on Monday, are gonna need to be ready to adapt to whatever is coming down in our timeline. They need to learn these skills and pivot when the unexpected happens. The next is communication as leadership. I've learned that leadership is communication, and you do not need to be a senior or president to have that title. Whether you're a public official, addressing a crisis, or a teacher leading a classroom, or a student, being an effective communicator is a skill that you need to have. To be able to tell a story clearly and to be able to distill complex things in plain language is what builds trust and helps keep things moving forward. The other thing I mentioned is being resilient and having a community. My path wasn't always smooth. We mentioned my bio, but there were some setbacks. There were years where I worked at a motel, I worked as an Uber driver, I delivered pizza, I washed dishes, all to get by. It's not on my LinkedIn, but it's there. In that time, I learned resilience. That path to leadership isn't straight, and I learned the value of community and that no one succeeds alone. Your students need to hear that when you go back next week. Setbacks are not failures. They're lessons and training grounds. So we're all here because this is a business education conference. Education does not stop when you leave the classroom. Every role that I've had, whether it was in journalism, public service industry, I have tried to instill education in those roles. Not just my knowledge, but mentorship. I make it a point to teach my team how to do my job. Not because I want to leave, but because I'm not a gatekeeper. That's not what leadership is about. It's about succession, continuity, and it's about what I love to say all the time, setting that elevator back down so that others can be successful and rise. There's a story I want to share with you all. It's that really kind of brings it all together. And I think about this story a lot because the things that I've done instilled somebody else to rise. So this year I sat down with an individual at work. We produce a podcast, and this individual and I were discussing how town government works. And one of the questions that I asked this individual was, how'd you fall into public service? So they started telling me the story, and at the time, they were a teenager. And they had just moved to Tyngsborough. And they were, I think, around 13, 14 at the time. They had moved from the big city. I think they were in Lowell, and Tyngsborough was next door. They didn't know that many people, but they had their bike, and they were pretty curious. And one day, and actually I remember this, the spring of '09, remember, if anyone remember, '09, every week it rained, every weekend it rained, and such. And so this individual is telling me, while they were on the couch channel surfing, they stumbled on the local government channel and started watching the local meetings. And there was something about watching the local meetings that grabbed their attention. Mind you, they're 13, 14 at the time. They're telling me the story, and here's the part where it gave me the goosebumps. They mentioned the year, as I said, you know, the year rained, 2009. 2009 was the year I started in Tyngsborough. Back then, that little channel, the government channel, was just more of a bulletin board. When I arrived in the spring of '09, I decided to revamp the channel, do live meetings, do live annual town meeting, for those of you who are familiar with the town meeting model. I didn't know at the time that my little small changes to make government more visible would impact this teenager's life. It was their introduction to town government and instilled in them their passion. And you want to know who that person was? My boss, Colin Loisel, who is the town manager for the town of Tyngsborough. This is one of the youngest town managers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Him telling that story, I was just stunned that my little action impacted a student's trajectory. So sometimes, without even realizing it, we indirectly inspire people in the smallest, tiniest decisions, whether it's in a classroom, in a newsroom, government channel. It creates that ripple effects that will change someone else's life and future. That, my friends, is what education is. It's planting those seeds that we may never see bloom, sending that elevator back down, giving somebody that spark, that encouragement, or the perspective that they need to imagine a different path forward. That is the work we do every single day. That is the work that you will continue when you return to that classroom Monday. And by the way, you bring your best self. When you went and got your teaching certificate and you walked into that classroom, you brought your best self. That is my assignment for you when you return to your classroom next week. Bring your best self. So as we think about the insights to the future, I want to leave you with two assignments. Besides bringing your best self, and to some of the students that are here, I want you to be bold, to try and fail, and to get up and try again. You may have your best intention to have this path that, okay, I'm going to be this, and this is what I need to do, but sometimes there are going to be some setbacks. That's okay. It's winding. And to my educators, keep learning. Keep believing in your students. I know it's hard. I know there are changes coming left and right from all multiple directions. And you may get discouraged. Policy. What you do today will ripple for the next decades. And you guys being here today, that continuing education is important. Networking and fellowshipping with your fellow educators, that's important. Now, I want to close with this quote that I found from one of your fellow educators, Dr. Dwan Warmack over at Claflin University. What you do today forward will define what it means to be elevated and transform. That is the work you do, that is the gift you give, and that is the future you are helping to build. I wish you a successful conference and a successful career. Thank you so much.